now. It goes out for quite a bit. So
great. Thanks for the time, guys.
Thanks, Ken.
Our next question comes from Ben Nolan with Stifel.
Hey, guys. First, congrats, James. It's quite a step up, so nicely done. Also nicely done on all of your presentation today. My first question goes back to you discussed the LR1 sale a little bit, and it seemed opportunistic. But just confirming, there was nothing structural about LR1s that you think, okay, well, hey, we prefer LR2s or MRs or something like that. It was just that's where the best buy interest is. Is that fair?
No. I think that there was, in terms of valuation, there was first of all, there's buy-in across the board, across all all the sites. And this is universally across modern tankers, modern product tankers. The prices have moved upward. I think what's so rational for us in the LR1s was that here we could do the job on the balance sheet and giving us the strategic freedom later, hopefully, to create some real value. But at the same time, the LR1s is the one grouping, the one size range that we ourselves that don't have, let's say, the leadership position. We have a leadership position in the Handys, the MRs, and the LR2s. In the LR1s, we had a good position, but not a leadership position. And the best dynamic for us overall, not only was as Emmanuel pointing out, was Hafnia the best sort of, was a solid buyer, but it also became, as he didn't explain, the best alternative. It comes alternative at even prices across other vessels, because here you were able to, we believe very much in consolidation. We've spoken about this before. And we were able to place those vessels into the hands of the number one owner and operator of LR1s, thereby consolidating as opposed to fragmenting that market. And that market sits between, even though it's a smaller market than MRs and LR2s, it is important in that it sits in between MRs and LR2s. So anything that we can do to help strengthen that dynamic in the LR1 market will be beneficial to us in our MR and LR2 market.
Okay, that's very clear. Thanks, Robert. And then for my second question, notice that you guys are continuing to add scrubbers, especially on the MRs. Obviously, the fuel spreads have widened back out. I guess my question is, you talked about shipyard tightness on the new builds. Obviously, there's supply chain issues. Are you running into, well, with wider margins, I would imagine there's other people also out there looking to install scrubbers. At this point, how hard is that to do? Is it challenging to get shipyard space for repairs and scrubber installations? Is it hard to get the equipment itself? Any chance of delays or inflation in that respect?
Cameron?
I can take that if you like, Robert. As you know, Ben, the yards that are in new construction and those that are in repair and retrofitting are fundamentally very different yards, and so there's not a lot of overlap in that capacity. With the tightness that we've seen in containers and dry bulk, there isn't a raft of inquiry coming from those sectors around retrofitting right now, so there is capacity available. And then when it comes to supply chain concerns or inflationary pressures, they are modest at best. There are always risks, of course, but right now, given that the manufacturing of scrubbers is largely located in Asia and China specifically, the same place where the shipyards reside, we don't ourselves see great risks in either the logistics or the inflationary pressure just now.
All right. Thanks, Kim.
Our next question comes from Magnus Fyhr with H.C. Wainwright.
Yeah, good morning. Just
a question, on the overall market. I agree with your bullish view, but is there something we're missing here? What, besides, another Omicron variant, is there anything else that concerns you? I mean, oil prices have crept up here as of late at 7-year highs. I mean, could that eventually eat into refinery margins and end user demand? Or is there something else we're missing?
It could be. There are lots of coulds in this one. There's, even the, Ukraine-Russia situation. I mean, traditionally, war has always been good for the tanker market in the short term. But if that led to, something wider and something extremely disruptive to tanker demand, then that would be a negative. But, we don't know, Magnus, is the answer to that thing that could knock this demand scenario away. Because what we're basing it on, as Emmanuel and James said, is what we see all around us, which is that when Omicron passes, people become more mobile, and that they want to get out there and spend their money and do things and travel to friends and spend time with, doing things again.
All right, thanks for that color. And just on the near-term outlook, based on the graphs that you showed, the IEA has demand picking up pretty nicely each quarter going forward. Is there any, do you see the seasonal demand or the seasonality playing out different this year than other years?
Well, it could do. It could do to the extent that you're going into, it would appear at the moment, unless something dramatic starts to happen very quickly, very quickly, you're going to go into increased jet fuel demand and increased gasoline demand off a low inventory base. So you may not have, in a weird way, there's normally some form of weakening period as we go into the spring, but that is likely to, we would anticipate that's likely to be, muted in an environment where there's low inventories already into an increasing seasonal demand aspect, plus an Omicron coming out aspect for jet fuel.
Again, one area we haven't mentioned, the IEA took their numbers up. They adjusted 15 years of demand numbers. They partly said that petrochemical demand, especially naphtha demand, is very strong. Is there anything you're seeing there that, could surprise on the upside?
Yeah, look, it's always good to have. That's great. That's encouraging that petrochemical demand is strong because, on the margin in a weak market, you don't want to have those chemical tankers coming into the product trade. So it's great if the petrochemical demand is going up and getting stronger.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks.
Our next question comes from Liam Burke with B. Riley.
Thank you. The operating cash flow for the fourth quarter, Brian, was very strong in conjunction with the improving a sequential step up in rates. When you're looking to buy back shares, are you anticipating be able to generate internal cash through the course of 22, or do you look to borrow to buy back the shares opportunistically?
I think the only statement that we've made on shares is that would be strongly considered once we see the visibility of rates at 17,000 or above.
Okay, fair
and
enough.
We would give very little information to the market on buybacks or strategy, et cetera, in the same sense as we're going to give very little detailed information on, NAVs, because, we've been here, the management's been in another company, another cycle going through. That company had a huge buyback, and it was very